Hey everyone, it's Jason Pannone, Head of Reference and Cultural Assets Manager here at the East Hartford Public Library. For this 10th installment of Raiders of the Lost Archive, I'm going to show you some neat library-related things that I found in the archives the other day. These are Accession Books, which is fancy schmancy librarian speak for a record of all the books that were acquired by the library at various points in history. The earliest one I grabbed was from 1899, and the latest one is from the mid-50s. Now, these are kind of neat in that they show kind of what people were interested in at the time. It's a nice snapshot of social history, history of librarianship, it's a history of books. So they're really cool stuff. So I'm going to take you on a tour of these books right now, and bear with me as I grab the camera. And I am going to switch angles. So what we have here is the title page of the oldest book. It's from the 1890s, and this is the earliest way to make a catalog. Basically, you can see, as I rotate, Melville Dewey. That is the Dewey Decimal System. He is the founder of it. So if you have trouble navigating the Dewey Decimal System, you can shake your fist at him. But this is really cool, not only for librarians, because it shows, here's a standard accession book, how to catalog. And, you know, while it's important, perhaps only for librarians, but it also shows just how knowledge is organized and how it's changed over the years. There's all sorts of rules here. Whoops, excuse me. So now, let's see where this one starts. Oh, I was going to show you one thing. Just, you know, library abbreviations, an attempt at standardization, how to record months, days, and years, numbers. But this is neat. The different colors of bindings to indicate what language. So that if you wanted an American book, you would bind it in light brown leather, in English in dark brown, Italian in maroon, Latin in light green, Greek in dark green. It's pretty neat. Up here, these are all book sizes. We still use these today. Most books, they're different. This number here refers to the number of folds. It used to be that when books were made, it would be one sheet of paper, and then it would be folded a number of times into pages. So if you just left a whole sheet of paper like this would be a folio. Fold it 4 times, it becomes a quarto. Fold it so it makes 8 pages, an octavo, and so on. Today what's very common is octavo and quarto. Most hardbacks are quartos and most paperbacks are octavos. Other sizes are still made. There's different levels of folios. I just think it's a neat little piece of book history in case you're into things like that. Forgive that interruption. I had to rescue a cat from getting entangled in a book bag. But here's the earliest record that I can find in this book. It's from 1896, April 15th. And you can see just all the different things here. Charles Dickens. There's a whole bunch of Dickens books that were acquired right here. Edwin Bulwer Lytton, very, very prominent Victorian writer. N.Y. Bedford Clark. I mean, this is just super neat. And you can see the prices. Raymond Library for a whopping 25 cents. And then interestingly, this was used all the way in 1945. These two books by Edward Bulwer Lytton, were discarded in 1945. So these books were in the library for almost 50 years, which I think is super cool. If we flip to another page, Anthony Trollope, here's another big one. But at this point, the library had only been in existence for The actual Raymond building had been in existence less than 10 years because it was not built until 1889. The library was just 21 years old at this point. So it's kind of neat to see just what the library was acquiring in its early years, and quite a bit actually, and all for the princely sum of 25 cents. See, here's more. Discarded 1946. Discarded 1945. Sorry, I'm getting lost in all this too. So this is super neat. Now look here, class, children's. We still use this numbering system today. So it's kind of neat that from 1896 to 2020, the numbering system, it's evolved a little bit, but we're still using Dewey's system from the 19th century. It's pretty cool. Also interesting is that the number of children's books you see here. Our library, Raymond Library, was kind of unique in having a children's librarian very early in its history. I believe the record of the earliest children's librarian specifically hired as a children's librarian was either 1907 or 1910. This is kind of unusual because for a long time in libraries, children were thought of as miniature adults. They were to be seen, not heard, and they would not have borrowing privileges, and they would not have programs established for them. That was an innovation that was started at the New York Public Library in the late 19th century and then slowly spread. Really, Raymond Library has been known throughout its history for its children's programs. There's records, I believe it's in Lee Paquette's History of East Hartford, that immigrant families would bring their kids to the library so that they would learn English and they would learn more about American culture. So it's really neat to see that not only in the 1890s, I think, I don't see a date here, that children's books were being acquired specifically for children. I just think that's a neat piece of social history. So I'm going to change books and we'll take a look at the next one. This next book starts in December of 1916, just before America, and about a year before America entered the Great War. And again, you can see still the same classes being used. There's more children's books right there. Prices have gone up in the intervening 20-some years. Books are now a whopping $1.12, $1.22, 90 cents. Some European war story. This book was discarded in 1949. Here's a book. Oh, here's an interesting one. It's Dickens' Bleak House with Everyman's Library with an introduction by one of my favorite authors, G.K. Chesterton. Chesterton was really big in reviving interest in Dickens in the early 20th century. Dickens had really fallen out of fashion after his death and into the early 20th century, and it really was Chesterton who wrote a magisterial study of Dickens, who really revived interest in Dickens, and that's why he's so prominent today. But moving on, I'm going to randomly flip to, we're now in February 1920, and we can see more books. And I'm seeing all these discarded March 1949. It must have been a big purge that year, so de-accessioning, of getting rid of some older books to make room for new books. This goes on in libraries. It's a constant tension of, how to maintain the freshness of the collection while not just throwing things out willy-nilly. It's not a perfect science, but it does happen. So a little interesting piece of library history there. And now I'm going to flip toward the end, where we wind up at May 1924, 8 years later. And you can see all sorts of cool stuff here. So there we go. I'm going to look at one more book. And now we've jumped almost 60 years ahead to 1954. And you can see still the same sort of things being recorded. Except the classification is now moved here. Cost is now up to $2.50. Good gracious. When you consider that books nowadays run $14, $15 for paperbacks and $25 to $30 for hardbacks, a lot of inflation there. And again, we're seeing discards. Here's one over here, 1960, 1969, 57, 66. But also see we're buying multiple copies, too, of books. Probably was a bestseller, although I've never heard of Manning Coles. But it's kind of neat because you can see what authors were big back in the day and who weren't. So there you go. Let's go flip a little bit ahead. This was used 1954 and 55 were busy years. So you can see this right here goes to October 22nd, 1955. November 14th. November 18th. And this is well before the days of computers. So think about having to hand enter all this stuff to make a record and then typing up a card for the card catalog. Nowadays, we just download records directly from our ordering companies and they just send it to us and we pop it in our catalog and there it goes. It's much, much simpler than having to handwrite all this out as you would have in the old days. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions about libraries or the history of books, please let me know. I can talk for hours about this. I know I've bored many people on the subject, but I love talking about it, so I'd love to chat with you about it. In any event, that's it for this week. So thanks for watching, and as always, practice safe social distancing, wear your masks, wash your hands, and we'll see you next time. Bye.